Now it's time for EEEZ Around the Table with your host, Easy, who I'm pretty sure is easier than me. Earmuffs, kids. Adults only. Just the way I like it.
And welcome to the Legend Sports Network, Lenny, Melnick, afantasysports.com, to EEEZ Around the Table. And, tonight we have one regular and one new comer to the round table. For everyone out there, DVD Dan, who's been doing the Fisticuffs show, which has been really great, except Dan, when I can't stay awake, I apologize. It's been a long week at work and staying up those late nights. We're glad to have you tonight. And then we also have Tony Sincata, who's been in the chat room at Lenny Melnick, afantasysports.com a little bit today. We're glad he's also joining us. Dan, first of all, what nights are your shows on?
We're doing Monday nights at 11 p.m. Eastern for baseball discussions, and Thursdays, same thing, 11 p.m. Eastern for football discussions. All
right, that's good. And Tony, again, welcome to the show. Glad to have you on here. I've listened to you for a lot of years. Listened to Lenny talk about you quite a bit. Do you have any show or anything that I know you said you got stuff coming up next year? Anything you want to tell us at all? Do I have no Tony? Mr. Sincata? Dan, you don't hear him either, do you?
No, I saw his face flash a couple different times, but that's about it. Yeah.
Tony, I don't know if you're in the chat room or I don't see his mic muted or anything like that. Tony, if your mic is muted or anything, me and him were talking just fine.
Basically, if you don't know where I am or you don't know how to find me, can you hear me now? Hello there. This is Verizon.
I do have you there. There is a little bit of delay. I do have you now, though, Tony. It's Verizon. Yeah, I think
he's on now.
Yeah, me and him were talking just fine. Now he seems to be in a little delay. If it keeps up, Tony, if you want to pop out and back in and join, I can put the link back in the room. But like I said, we were fine till we started the show. Dan, I'm going to post the link back in there. And, if he wants to try again, Tony, again, I don't know if you hear us at all, but like I said, we've lost you again. So, and one of the reasons, Tony in the chat room this morning, I don't know if he can hear or whatever, we'll wait till we get him. We were talking about participation and, do young kids, are we ruining children by, participation ribbons and that kind of stuff versus, giving them awards for achievement versus just showing up. So we'll see if he pops in and pops back out or vice versa. But Dan, my question to you, first of all, is, are you still playing fantasy football because Easy is out?
I have down to one league I made the Super Bowl in out of, I want to say 6 that I'm playing.
Yeah, this is, you get to the playoffs. That's a pretty good thing, but man, it's just crushing when your season's over. The good thing is I had one of those weeks where my whole team crapped the bed. The whole team just went down the tubes. So there wasn't one player that met expectations. So I think I'd rather lose that way. Are you one of those that would say, no, I'd rather lose by a few points, or would you rather just get your butt kicked in?
I'd rather get just my face kicked in. I had one league in particular this year where it came down to the whole entire season came down to one game where I lost by 0.8 points. And
right.
if I'd have made the playoffs, I'd be smoking right now and winning in the Super Bowl after the first week, which is just heartbreaking.
We got Tony, you've joined us back. How are you? Got us now?
Yeah, hopefully. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's perfect. We got you. Because me and you chatted for 10 minutes and had no problem until we started. So we got you fine.
Yeah, threesomes always end up being a problem. Somebody gets left out. And
Yeah.
so,
That's right. Someone's got to hold the beer. That's, I understand. First of all, like I said, you said I think you kind of were saying people can find you if they need to find you. But I didn't want to leave out if you had anything you wanted to, push a little bit, or a website, or plug anything. The people in the chat room here already pretty much know you. We're just glad to have you. But the question I asked, are you one of those who likes to, if you're going to lose in a semifinals or a Super Bowl or, any fantasy league, are you one of these people who want to get their butt kicked in and lose that way? Or are you one of those that go, oh, no, I'd rather be a close game and lose? Do you have a preference of loss?
yeah, you know what? That's a great question. I'd rather lose on a Monday night game, or the Sunday night game. At least a little drama. I like a little drama.
Okay, I do like sweating out on a Monday when I still think I have a chance to win. I think, okay, I was out so early, even the 4 o'clock games, I stopped paying attention, and it kind of, I walked around Sunday night going, I'm done. I got nothing to do. Me and the wife ended up watching a movie instead of the Sunday night football game because I have nothing to play for now. My Bengals have been out of it. So is that part of it? I was like, you know what? I'm glad it's over. I have lost many a times on a late Monday night, crazy affair. And I agree with you. You get more satisfaction going that long. But when the night's over, I still think I like getting beat by 80 points. Which is exactly what happened to me in my semifinals. We're in a high scoring league. I was averaging over 200 points over the last 8 weeks. And I scored 105. So, you know what? Can't say much. So, and the same in DFS. Do you guys, I know, Dan, do you play much DNF or DFS? I've heard you talk a little bit about you tried hockey or basketball the other day, I think.
Yeah, I played my first basketball. I play a lot of NFL and MLB DFS. And I've recently, like I said, once I kind of realized I was down to about 2 teams in the playoffs, and I started doing a lot more DFS. So I've really been enjoying the single game DFS. So I've been having a lot of fun with that.
You mean head-to-head, or you're talking the what do they call it?
Just for example, a Sunday night game where you just play the lineup of the Sunday night game, or a Monday night game where you just play the lineup of those players.
Right. And are you that way when you play DFS? Are you one of those that, are you just trying to, head-to-head it's one thing, but if you get in the tournament, are you just, all right. So
I'm really not playing a lot of tournaments. I'm doing more 50-50 double ups and head-to-head type stuff.
All right. So, and Tony, I know you said you're playing DFS basketball today. How many contests in basketball do you normally get in a night? Not to be too personal.
Like 20.
20. Unfortunately, I'm one of those. I've played very little DFS. I've committed 5 years of my life to to seasonal fantasy. And I just don't feel I can commit the right amount of time to play DFS. I'm convinced in my head that it requires dedication. Am I right or wrong?
Absolutely. If you're playing basketball, especially, because so many times, and that creates opportunity for you to get a lesser price guy in there. So basically, you got to dedicate your life from 5:30 to 7 o'clock. To that, and then you have a West Coast games. They allow you to change your lineups later. So basically, you're dedicating 5:30 to 10:30 to basketball. And some people have normal lives.
Yeah, I barely have a normal life, but and I'm just one of those. And people who know me, when I dive into something, I dive in. I commit a lot. And that's why I don't do DFS. I'm afraid of the time commitment. And the next thing what was, I already do a lot for regular seasonal fantasy. I can't imagine if I was doing both, I would probably never see the family. So I stay out of it other than, some random piddling around. Do you do football, baseball? Do you do them all, including even like hockey? I know we got a guy on the thing that he says he makes pretty decent money doing just hockey DFS, and I can't even pronounce names in those leagues.
Yeah, I don't either. Vladimir Kachikakov is the last guy I know. And I do hockey the 6 days during the NBA break.
Isn't he a French Russian?
Yeah.
It's tough. I agree.
He's one of Trump's boys. So for the 6 days, For the 6 days, I go at it really hard, though. I'll spend 3 or 4 hours a day doing everything I can in hockey. Like, I don't just fire a lineup in there. And I got to tell you, I get fired up during those 6 days for hockey, and I treat it like everything else.
Right. See, I just don't. And I mean, when I say it scares me, I mean, scared might not be the wrong word, but I'm like I said, I've been married 36 years. I got really deep into the online poker 15 years ago when my kids were even little, and my wife at that point, eventually, she dealt with it for a while, and there was some decent income. I was fairly good at it. But the time, I mean, I played every waking hour because I dedicated myself to the craft. I studied. And when I wasn't playing, I was studying, that type of thing. And I'm afraid that DFS could turn that way real quickly where, 5 lineups becomes 10, 10 lineups become 15. And then the next thing you know, like you said, especially in basketball, because you have to be there at game time, right? I mean, that's half the battle, even they say. It's if you're not going to be there at game time, at the beginning of game times, you're just giving money away, right?
Yeah, so the whole thing is with the wife, just tell them at least you're not going to hookers and cocaine. It's only fantasy sports.
Okay, but okay, my wife might say, okay, at least if it's a hooker, I know you're only going to be gone 10 minutes. Fantasy sports, I may be going all week. That's the problem. She knows I last a lot longer when it comes to fantasy sports. So I'm not sure that's a good way to go. So I think she'd prefer me get addicted to sweeping, but or vacuuming, but. I don't know. I go back and forth. Part of me thinks maybe, in a year or two, just forget seasonal football and do DFS for a season. Because I'm just not sure I could do both or balance it.
You should do like the September call-ups. Now that you're out of the playoffs, you should do DFS the rest of the year. Maybe get your feet wet in the show a little bit, see how it goes for you. But yeah, now's the time to do it.
And again, what wasn't even one of my criteria. Where does a person really go to start? I mean, either one of you. I have piddled. That's the most I can say. I've just kind of, Lou makes fun of me. What I do every weekend until the Bengals went to shit, I would build my Bengals lineup. I'd put it in a big tournament and go, if the Bengals go off, maybe I'll win $20. That was kind of all I've ever done. Where does one really go? Do I need to really go to one of these sites, one of their portals and join and do all that stuff? Or do you just learn by playing? Either one of you.
Go either way. Yeah, I can go either way. So here's what I would do. I would either join one of those sites or forget joining one of those sites. Say you don't want to invest.
There you go. Thank you. That was a good answer. Do one or not join one.
So,
okay.
Yeah, here's what you do. You find out who the best players are, right? So you find out the Drew Dinkmars, you find out them, and you play them in dollar head-to-head games, and you just want to see what kind of lineups they're putting together. You take whatever money you're going to play, say $10 a night. Let's just say $10 a night because mathematically it's easy. I'm going to play $8 out of my 10. I'm going to play in head-to-heads or 50-50s. I'm going to put $2 in a tournament just in case I got lucky one night, and that's going to balance me out for the year. So don't avoid those guys. Take those guys on. That's the only way to learn.
Okay. Now I have to ask that because you bring up another question. Where do I find those names? Dinkmeyer I've heard, and obviously I know some of the names from listening to Sirius and some of the other fantasy shows. But, where I've always heard, and maybe I haven't done this, back to my thing. I don't study enough because I don't want to go in that rabbit hole yet. Are there places on the sites like DraftKings? Is there a place to just go to see? I've heard leaderboards, that type thing. Is there a place to go see these names and find out who you want to chase?
All the sites, including season-long sites, now make them carry a badge next to all the advanced players. So I'll have a badge next to my name there, and the badge signifies either I've won over 10 tournaments, $2,500 each, and things like that. So this signifies with the badges there, you can tell who the top players are.
All right. Dan, do you go that far in, or are you – because, the few times I've done, multiple head-to-heads, I just hit a few buttons and then people join me. I don't really – which is, again, it's maybe my ignorance. How do you go about when you play head-to-head? How do you find an opponent?
Basically, same kind of deal. I'm not going the depth that Tony over there is going, but I'm also don't have anywhere near the experience that man has. Like I said, I really enjoy the 50-50s. That basically is, if there's 1,000 people in the league, the top 500 are going to double up their money. So if you put in, $4, you're going to get your $4 back plus another $4.
Right, but I think Tony's thing is if you play them head-to-head, 1-to-1, you're obviously going to see their lineup and pay attention.
That was a great point. I was definitely absorbing that. So
yeah, I agree. That's a good idea. And let's say of all the sports, does it really matter which one you jump into first? Is football easier, to learn, or baseball, or is that, like you said, just jump into hockey?
Whatever you have the most knowledge in is going to be helpful.
Okay.
Basketball is the most predictable of any fantasy sport because of variance, right? Let's just take baseball, for instance, right? You can hit a ball 315 feet. It can be caught as an out. It could be a line drive off the wall. It can go over the wall. All those are variants on the same hit ball.
Yeah, good point.
Football, you can have a 1-yard run, right? You can get 6 points for a touchdown, or you could have a 1-yard run, or you could have a fumble. You got a basket, it's a basket. You got a rebound, it's a rebound.
Right.
No variance in basketball. The only variance is the 2 to 3 point shot. The usage rate that you look at these guys playing time is about the same every night, unless somebody's out of that lineup. Basketball, anybody with any experience will tell you, is the greatest and most predictable sport. Thus, you get a lot of shocks playing, though. So I think the level of player you're up against is tougher as well.
Okay. And that's probably a good – so basketball for variance, but you're going to be up against tougher players. See, and Dan, you said something, and again, Tony, I've never had the opportunity to have you on the show, and this is maybe a good chance to ask this question because I always worry about the person who says, I know a lot about baseball or I know a lot about NFL, so I'm going to play DFS. As a person, I cannot say I'm an expert poker player. I can say I'm very good. And trust me, I love playing. People go, oh, I'm good at poker, so I'll play. You know what I'm saying? They think they're good enough to take money from people who really know how to play. And that's my point. Do you have to know anything about hockey to be good at playing DFS hockey? I mean, can you study it just by the numbers?
Even a legend, I think, is aware of this. Back in the day when we were on SiriusXM, I think it was on SiriusXM, I interviewed a guy that won 8 tournaments over 10 grand one baseball season. He doesn't know a single player in Major League Baseball. What? He basically he's a Canadian. He had 2 guys move in with him, teach him the game of baseball, and then he developed algorithms and spreadsheets to compute it all, and he won 8, including the national championship for FanDuel.
Man.
Goddamn algorithms, man.
Well, but that's my point, Dan. You're the one that said, pick the one, and that's why I haven't jumped in yet, because you said, gravitate to the one you know most about the sport. My concern is that will influence me too much, meaning, and that's why I keep saying hockey. I know nothing. So I keep thinking that do hockey first because my knowledge of hockey will not influence who I'm picking or playing because I'm going to have to do it based on numbers or some kind of statistic because I don't know anything else. So I've always thought that was the way to go. I'm sure, and again, Dan, I've known you a little bit now, I'm sure, you would say, hey, so-and-so is going up against so-and-so tonight. So I'm definitely putting him on my team. But I do listen to enough DFS people to go, there's other numbers that go into it more than you just saying, I know he hits him good. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. Tony, what about you? Are you knowledgeable more in basketball, or I don't even know what your sports background? I mean, do you follow all sports or
every sport? So I'm going to tell you what my day goes. So I try not to look at this stuff early in the morning because just like you did with poker, is that I'll get fixated on it throughout the whole day. So I don't want to look at this stuff before 1 o'clock in the afafternoon.
All right, that's
sometimes
good.
Yeah, but sometimes you can't help yourself, right? You get off a good night.
Amen.
Right? So you start looking at this stuff, right? And what I always do is I got 2 of those sites that I belong to that people get information from, right? I don't look at those sites till 6 because I don't want them to distort my opinion of where I'm going with this. But what I do want to use them for, if they have a player that I didn't consider, I got to find out why.
Gotcha.
And they're basically my fact checker. And so I use that to go from there. And I think they do a great job, those sites. And I think they're very repetitive. If you belong to one, a lot of them have the same information, but I think they do an unbelievable job. I mean, most of those guys went to Ivy League schools and quit their finance jobs to play their fantasy sports, so they're doing something right.
Now, what's your opinion, though, when I see these sites, the DFS, things, again, I can only put it in the poker realm. The really great players weren't out there, selling their site as much. It was the guys below them that come to their site and do this. Is that the same in DFS? I always considered, is the guy that's selling me his advice, if he knew that much, wouldn't he just use his own, advice and keep, and not share it? I guess that's what I always worry about some of those sites. Am I just paying for somebody's mediocre advice, or how you distinguish one from the other? Maybe you just have to try a couple of them and follow and finally judge one or the other.
There's a lot of shit out there. There's
right.
A lot of complete bullshit that you'll lose all your money from. But I'll tell you about the guys at Daily Roto. So Drew Dinkmeyer, Mike Leone. I don't work for those guys anymore. I left that situation over a money dispute. And I'll tell you what, there ain't a better place to get information from. And the reason they do it is that, one, they enjoy playing. They know that in 2002, I was the number 6 player in the world. I'm probably not even in the top 2,500 now.
And there's a lot of players too, right?
There's so many players, and they see how that works out, right? So they're setting themselves up for a long run here, saying, hey, you know what? Every year, people get more and more knowledge, and they get better and better, the players out there. Hey, only 20% of people cash in tournaments. DFS tournaments are top weighted. Only if it's worth any money. That don't last forever, no matter how good you are. So they're giving great information. Those guys are the best writers that I've ever seen. Absolutely, I'll live and die with them. Some of this other stuff you see on Twitter is bullshit, though.
So the site kind of is, a way for them to float some variance, meaning the income from the site, I'm sure, helps them, financially play. Dan, what about you? Have you participated in and I'll use the word pay site. The free sites, that's a whole nother realm. Dan, do you pay for any sites where you try to get DFS advice?
I don't. I have a ton of experience with that. No.
A ton of experience. All right. See that? And the few times, and here's the other thing, you know what? I listen to all these people. Again, I listen to every talk show. I listen to both of the live fantasy, Sirius and FNTSY. I listen to all that. And, it's just hard. The big thing they'll give you is all these low end guys, they're like, man, this is the guy tonight. You get this guy, and I'll just throw a number. This $2,000 guy can't miss for $2,000. I'll play those couple of guys and they pay off for me. My problem seems to always be the top guy. I never pick the right, $10,000 guy. I'm like, Jesus, you think that'd be the easy part. I get a lot of advice they give you on, the sleepers and the sneakers and the this and the cheaps and all that, so that you have all this money left over to buy a good guy. It's the good guy that fucks me every time, it seems like. Is that because I'm doing that wrong too?
What kind of preparation are you picking with those guys? Are you are you randomly picking them out of a hat, or are you playing based on matchups?
I know enough about football. Let's say that's the one, and that's back to what I meant earlier. Just because I know a lot about fantasy football, I still have realized that doesn't make me a DFS player. But I'm just saying. And like this week, you put Zeke in the lineup, thinking, oh, I can't miss with Zeke against the Colts. And you miss, or you pick Keenan Allen, he gets hurt in the first play. I'm just saying, I don't have any luck. I don't, and that's my point. My $2,000 guy will get me 24 points. I go, yeah, I got my money's worth there. And then my top guy didn't get me shit. So,
what kind of stuff are you playing? Are you playing more tournaments, or are you doing kind of what Tony said and playing, a little of both?
I have to say, like I said, this was the first season I pretty much played very little. I set one or two, and like I said, truly, and I'm not lying, I truly just set Bengals lineups, and I would put, $5 in or a couple random tournaments, let's say. And I know that was lottery ticket play. I wanted to be able to root for my Bengals, and if they all went off, I might win a little money. So, this year I didn't do it. I did do a DFS. I did do a basketball a few weeks ago. And again, with no real, skill. That's my point. I don't have. That's why I just have realized I can't do it until I learn more. I have to go somewhere and study. And I think, like I said, Tony probably hit it there. I need to just play some heads up with some top players. Same with poker. I would love to play, straight up poker with some of the top players, and you learn by getting your ass beat sometimes.
Yeah, I know a guy that's actually a doctor, and that's how he learned. He basically played dollars, and then he's gone on 4 or 5 trips, and he's won, a couple $100,000.
Right. And then I'm going to ask this straight out to either one of you. Is there one strategy, or is it multiple strategies that other people have just perfected and they just know, back to the same thing, back in the old poker days, it eventually got to where everyone had a damn book. But for a while, some of the people would tell you, if you want to be a good poker player, don't read 10 poker books, read one poker book, and it didn't even matter which one, and read it 10 times. Study it, learn that technique, and then you can move on from there. And I think in DFS, that's what I think. I'm not in that right now. I'm just using some random strategies that I hear on a fantasy show here and there. And, and I've not lost a ton, but I haven't played a lot. And last year I probably actually was ahead. But are there too many? Can you listen to too many people?
Oh, absolutely. Like you listen to that trash on Sirius XM, right? Those guys got 125 lineups every night. So how do they relate to everybody listening to the shows, right? They don't relate at all. Here's the thing. You have to have a strategy that matches your bankroll. And what I don't hear enough about is like, hey, here's the thing. I got a bankroll where I'm willing to spend $10, $20, $30 a night. I'm willing to go $300 a month. And how do I attack that? And so basically, what I want to do is I'll play a $40 or $50 game, sometimes even $100 game, right? Because I don't want to play thousands of people.
Right.
I want to play hundreds of people. So the higher dollar ones are there. And so I'm going to pull at that in my tournament. So I'm going to go anywhere from 40 to 100 in my tournaments, right? And then I'm going to double that at least in head-to-heads or 50-50s because I don't want to get killed on the night. I want to, put it in there. And if I have a good lineup, you know what? I'll make a couple bucks here and there. But those guys on the radio, every one of them on Sirius XM right now is 125 lineups. The strategy they've given you won't work for you because you can't put 125 lineups in.
Right. Just time alone, let alone money, just the time alone for the average listener.
No, it takes 3 minutes to put 125 lineups. They all have software that does it for them.
Oh, see, I'm even out there. I'm assuming that's something I can buy too for just $49.95. You too can own software that lets you put in 125 lineups.
Yes.
And
yes, you can.
Dan, I guess, Dan, do you even do that? Do you automate some of I see when I do the website, I see there's ways to import lineups and export lineups. I've never even dicked with that. That's still way above what I felt I'm ready to do.
That's real simple stuff, man. All you're doing is creating a lineup, and then if you want to play in multiple tournaments, it'll ask you if you want to import the same lineup as long as the rules are the same. It's very simple.
Right, but how do you set the lineup? I'm assuming there's a way to set a lineup on my computer and then send it to their website. Is that true? I hear enough people talk about spreadsheets. There's got to be a way to do it on my own computer and send it up. Yeah.
So basically, what you'll do is you'll set up your spreadsheet, your algorithms, right? And say, let's just take the NFL. Say you want 30% of your lineups to have Russell Wilson this week at quarterback. 20% of your lineups to have Aaron Rodgers. 10% Tom Brady. 5% Lamar Jackson. The spreadsheet comes up with 125 lineups that dictate all that with the best lineups around it for your dollar. And then bang, you take this tool, you hook it up to DraftKings, and all your lineups are out there for you.
Shit.
Wow.
So the key is, do one of these websites sell me the spreadsheet or sell me the spreadsheet already has the formulas, or is that also something I have to learn?
No, you can get the formulas all done for you. Roto Grinders, Daily Roto.
All of them sell it?
Yeah, they are. Peter Jen, all the reputable ones absolutely sell them. And what I like about the Daily Roto one is it lets you take and manipulate their numbers too. So if you do the homework and you do your research and you feel like you don't agree with them, you can change it up a little bit to suit your numbers.
Right. All right. Again, it was a topic I didn't prepare, but I had an expert, Dan, here tonight. I wanted to use him up a little bit. And
yeah,
hey,
right.
I don't know. I'm hoping to get good enough.
I'm not the expert.
What I mean, I'm hoping to do, I can win at least enough money. I buy one of them big forks like Tony has on his back wall. I just want a big fork. I've never owned a big fork. My grandma used to collect the little forks, and the little spoons where you would get every place you would go. You could buy that little spoon from Paris or the little fork from, Lynchburg, Kentucky. But I'm a big fork. I'm going to have to learn.
There's 8 kids running around those houses. That fork is a weapon.
It is not for protection. It's truly can be used as a weapon. All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's used for discipline around here.
Good. Okay, I'll try to be good. But want to thank real quick everyone in the chat room. Chat room's pretty active today. Cha-Cha's out there, Malpal, JJ. Appreciate all of you out there. There's been a few questions, and someone asked what our opinions were about regular sports gambling versus DFS, and will the legalization of sports gambling hurt DFS? I do gamble a little more than I do DFS, and some people argue that's the same thing. But just quickly, your opinion, Dan. First of all, do you do any regular sports betting or anything like that, or just DFS?
Definitely do regular sports betting, especially when I'm, in some place like Vegas. It's definitely something you do in the destination for fun. Do I have a bookie or anything crazy like that? No, I haven't gone that far. My co-host Dave, now he's another story.
Well, I mean, I have an offshore, bookie. I use one of those sites. It's not legal in my state, but online poker technically was never legal, but I was always able to play. Tony, what about you? Do you DFS versus sports gambling? Do you think they're both gambling? Do you keep them separate, or do you only do one?
I gamble. I mean, I've had sex 4,232 times without a condom.
Okay, sure. To a point, I guess.
Well, was that with different women?
Yeah. Hey, don't knock a guy with a big fork. You know what they say about a guy with a big fork?
I'm not sure. They were face down. Here's the thing. We live in a simplistic culture now, right? Everybody loves Twitter. Everybody loves things simple. So I just look at gambling, right? Is you have 2 teams, you have a point spread. People are going to go that way over DFS eventually. I think it'll definitely hurt from the DFS perspective, and I think more people will just go strictly to gambling. And I think that the people that are, hardcore DFS, then they start doing some parlays instead of, picking different sports guys each night. So I think it hurts DFS. I don't think it hurts fantasy. And I think it actually might help fantasy in the season-long terms, because now all these gamblers that have been gambling for a while see this other thing too, that they can follow along. So I think it might actually help fantasy a little bit. But it should have changed sports as we know it is crazy, because I never go to a game that I don't have action on, whether it's fantasy or daily. And now that I'm going to have 15,000 people there pissed off when the Knicks haven't won a game in 2 months, right? And they don't come 4-point spread, and that's what they're rooting for at the end of the game. Our whole world is going to change. All
right. First of all, welcome that guy, Chuck. Welcome to the round table. One of my regulars. You probably had a late night tonight. We're glad you joined us. I have Dan and Tony with us tonight. How are you doing this evening?
I am well. We were out bowling tonight.
Bowling. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Well, I sent you an email to let you know I was going to be running late. So
Lord, if you sent me email, I missed that email. That's so old school. But, what about you? Do you DFS or do sports gambling?
I do DFS. The chances I get into it, I don't get to play it as much as I would like, just between work and everything, but I do play it quite a bit.
All right. And Tony, also what I've learned now with some of this new gambling is these new in-game bets I have found a little bit addicting, where you can, you just happen to turn a game on, it's already in progress, and you open up a little app and you go, all right, this game's in progress. What's my options right now? And it is kind of, you put a quick $10 down on, something to happen in the last, 4 minutes of a game. I find that a little more addicting right now than just betting on the game itself. What do you think about that?
I'm going to admit I've done it. I've done it less than 50 times in my life. All right. My man FNTSY, Gabe Morency, right? If you guys listen to Gabe, I knows more about sports than anybody that I know. But he doesn't win because he bets every 5 minutes of every game. And he'll sit there, and I'll never forget this. He goes, Tony, am I a bad guy because I was cussing out the first baseman in the Williamsport World Series for making an error because he bet on the effing game?
The Little League World Series?
The Little League World.
That's amazing.
I mean, I agree. The action junkie in me is that way. It's like I said, when I went out this week so quickly in my semifinals, it really just boom. I was done. The Bengals had already lost. At 5 o'clock at night, I'm down 80 points. I just quit watching. It's back to so a little action on a game does make it. And I don't know what's the MMA fighting. I know nothing, but if I turn on a Friday night on the Fox and there's 4 bouts, I'll quickly open up the app and just pick 4 random guys just so I have something to root for. Probably stupid, but I have fun.
I go out every MMA live event. So the pay-per-view people out there, you can go to Hooters, you can watch them for free. You can go to Buffalo Wild Wings and watch them for free, right? So I go to every single one. I spend all week watching fights of every single fighter in those things. And I go out on that night, and it's a great night. I go out by myself. I have a couple drinks, and I bet, and I make bets on those too as well. And I hit a parlay one night. My greatest bet ever was the Nate Diaz over the Conor McGregor back in the day, the first fight. And I love the MMA stuff, and I love doing the research. And this is the part that people don't get. It's not like you're picking on a whim who to go out there. I like doing the research that leads up to that in a sport I've never done. Because when we look at football, baseball, basketball, we know a little about these sports. We have biases. If we don't know a lot about the sport, we're going through it for the first time, and we don't have anything in our heads already. Right.
Now, you've said research a couple of times. Evan, I don't do any research, when it comes to that. It's just, I just need to put a little money on the 4 bouts or I'm not going to watch them. I see where studying all week or preparing and getting an idea who they're playing or fighting, might give me an advantage. But that's back to I think that's the bad part of gambling or sports gambling is sometimes you don't really, most sports gamblers I know, studying's part of it, but then sometimes it's just like, nah, 100 on Miami. Why? I don't know. I just want 100 on Miami.
I'm going to tell you the kind of guy you are. All right. So I go to Hooters, right? I go to Hooters, and I got the guy sitting next to me, and he says he's got John Smith in this fight. And he leans over to me and goes, "Is he the black or the white guy?"
that would be me. I would agree. But again, I'll be the first to tell you.
I see the white guy, and he goes, "Oh shit!"
Right. But at the same time, here's how I look at it that way, and I'm not putting a whole, a bunch of big money on it. But let's say there's 4 fights, and I put $10 on all 4 fights. Even if I lose all 4 fights, I feel I got my $40 worth just because now I've got juice in the game. Dan, do you do any of these crazy, betting like that? Do you do boxing or MMA?
I do not, man. I stick to the stuff that I know. But I'm telling you, this has been like a DFS 101 tonight. I've been learning a ton from you guys.
I'm glad because I don't know anything. Did we lose? Dan, did Tony's camera fall? What did we just? No, he's coming back. Chuck, what about you?
I need some coffee.
I needed some coffee. Okay. Chuck, do you do any other weird sports? I mean, I'll do Wimbledon. I will. And I have friends that they get mad at me when they'll say this. I got people who love to go casinos. You know, here in Ohio, we got crazy, goofy casinos now. And I'll say, no, I don't want to go because I don't gamble. And they'll look at me and go, no one gambles more than you. And I said, I don't gamble on that shit. I will sit at a poker table in a casino, which unfortunately in Ohio we don't have poker rooms. But what? I will go to Vegas and sit in a poker room for 10 hours. But I wouldn't sit at a blackjack table for 5 minutes. I mean, to me that's gambling. Poker or sports gambling. I don't know. Am I crazy to think that's different than
more of a game of skill and less of a game of chance?
Yeah. I don't gamble on games of chances, even though I'll put money on a white guy that's boxing, and that's probably a mistake. But I'll throw down, or never bet in MMA on a woman that doesn't have dreadlocks or has, if her hair's just pulled back, you're going to lose, So I've learned that a little bit. I mean, MMA, 2 women fighting in the ring, I got to have money on that one. I mean, that's just 2 women fighting. You got to have money on it. I'm fine with that. So, I enjoy that part of gambling. Now, like I said, there's a couple people in here that say once gambling on sports becomes easier and, more like an app than DFS, that's when it will really hurt DFS the most, where, and again, I know some people would say it's illegal, but I do use an again, there's technically no sports gambling in Ohio. So, it's a little harder, but I do, I mean, the apps couldn't be easier now, I don't think, other than some people just question the legality. Do you think the easier it gets, that's more it will hurt fantasy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you think about it, it's going to get in Canada now. You can go to the convenience store and you can get a parlay card in Canada, and I think that's what's coming to the United States. So if I'm going in to get a milk, I'm going to get some chewing tobacco that I'm going to spit in a cup a little later. I'll probably throw a parlay in there.
Right. You've used the word parlay a few times. See, in horse racing, I'll do that once in a while, but it's something I've never looked into when I'm doing MMA fights or anything like that. I just, I'm tapping each individual.
Parlay bets are the best, man, especially for NFL or, any major sport for that matter.
And I guess I never looked at it that way. I mean, in horse racing, they'll tell you if you're not, parlay is the only way to win a lot of money, because otherwise, you
increase your odds.
Well, you increase your odds in it, but it's just the payout. But your risk is over more, more things have to happen.
All right, but for example, so if you want to go in real cheap style, say you go in with $10 and you pick a 3-team parlay and you pick all underdogs, your payoff is so much more than just betting that that $10 straight up on one game.
Right. I just haven't. It's something I've not looked into. I guess now that'll be my next little gambling adventure. Yeah. Start parlaying.
When I go to Vegas, that's definitely the way to go, especially in baseball. You can look at probable starters and stuff like that and really get a fairly good idea of, how you're going to bet it.
All right. Chuck, earlier we talked about, do you do DFS other than football and baseball? Do you do hockey or basketball? I know maybe you do basketball. I know I'm in a basketball league with you now.
Yeah, I do some basketball. I really stay away from hockey because I don't pay much attention to it, but I'll get into basketball because I have buddies that want to do season-long leagues. So, I can spot out good matchups and things like that. But other than that, I'm just mainly NFL, MLB, and NBA with DFS.
Right. All right.
After talking to Tony tonight, I'm going to start doing fantasy NASCAR. Something I know absolutely nothing about. I'm just going to start doing some research, just like you said.
That is the most frustrating sport ever. Because if I'm like you guys, right, I'm looking at the scoreboard all the time, right? I don't know shit about it, but Scott Engel, who I used to work with,
and Scott hooked on NASCAR.
Yeah, so I would just use their picks, right? In fact, I ended up sitting at the racetrack in New Jersey with Scott 3 hours watching a NASCAR race one time. But here's what happens is you get to that final 20 laps, they go to a pit stop, all the standings have changed. You could be in third place, you're out of the money. It's so crazy.
Yeah. Okay, you say forget it, but I will tell you that it's Now that's one where, to me, DFS, NASCAR and DFS, to me, NASCAR and golf, those are two that I do. Again, with no knowledge, I just know I'll watch more NASCAR, I'll watch more golf if I have a couple lineups in. And I make them with very little, knowledge, technically, but I just need some stakes in the game a little bit. There's nothing like having, and I think versus just gambling. To me, that's where DFS in those two sports is, to me, more fun than just saying, okay, I want to put $10 on, Dale Earnhardt Jr. Because now I'm just watching one driver. Where DFS, I can build that 5-car team or the 6-car team, so I have more things to root for. The same with golf. Just putting your money down on one golfer, it makes it fun to kind of have a team, I guess, aspect. So I gamble more DFS wise, and I would be the first to tell you, I'm gambling when I do DFS in NASCAR and golf. It's just, I just need a lineup so I have 5 people to root for. And again, in golf, Tony, I'm trying to stay away from the black guys in golf. I go boxing.
Well,
I like golf. I play it all the time. I think it's the second most popular DFS sport. You get bang for your buck because it's 4 days for that same investment for people out there. So golf has become a huge DFS sport.
I enjoy it.
It is no surprise to me that you like golf because you seem to like stroke play.
I enjoy. I mean, I guess I didn't ever start doing this thinking someday I'm going to have Tony Sincata, somebody I've listened to for a few years, or more on my show, and he's going to, give me a hard time about my stroke. But that's okay. I'm a grown man. I can take it.
Easy. I was going to say though, you're like what we would look at it with card rooms. You're the dead money in those.
Who? In a card room?
No. I'm saying in like the DFS golf and NASCAR.
I am the dead money. And I get that. That's why I'm not doing big money. Again, I like I said, I studied poker, so I know and that's my problem. I still don't want to dive in. I don't have the time. All right. One of the topics I did have today, just to get off DFS a little bit, because I'm going to talk seasonal, and the question is going to be for any seasonal sport. And that's every time I hear this, and when seasons end, you hear it a lot where people go, hey, what would you change, or what would you like to have different in fantasy? I'm going to ask the question to you three. What would be a major change for the good or the bad in season-long fantasy? And I'm not looking for the normal answer of no kickers, no defense, or no this or no that. I mean, I'm kind of looking for something more in-depth. And I'll throw out mine. My thing is, I don't like the heavy-ended payouts. I think it hurts seasonal a little bit because newer players find it pretty hard to ever get into the money, and that kind of thing. And I know a lot of people argue against that. It just, poker went through that a long time ago, where the guy who wins first gets 90% of the winnings, and the last, few people at the table get a few bucks. I think it hurts fantasy that the guy who finishes in your league and wins the Super Bowl, takes 80% of the money. So if I had to change something that would be a big change that I think commissioners should look into, I would look at spreading the money down a little bit, so more players can at least cash out a little bit. And I think that would help keep younger or newer players involved. So that's kind of where I'm going. I'm looking for, some in-depth kind of things. Where does season-long fantasy sports hurt, and what kind of rules do you think would help them grow a little more, even for the more novice sports fan? Anybody? Go.
I'll jump in here, guys. The first and foremost, I think we have to get rid of trade vetoes. They're an absolute atrocity. The only reason a trade should ever be vetoed is if there's pure collusion going on. And if that's the case, then those people need to be kicked out of a league. Other than that, I see absolutely no reason for any trade ever to be canceled.
All right.
I agree with that.
To me, that's a tad easy, but I'll give you that one. The 2 leagues I commission, we have no trade vetoes. Again, it's up to the commissioner. If enough people bitch and nobody can, come up with a good reason that if we think it's collusion, but yes. I'm just curious, any other? I like our league this year went to a more high scoring league. I think that's the average American. We want to win 500 to 400. Every once in a while I'll get stuck on one of these leagues where, it's no PPR or anything like that. And, it's 80 to 70. Do you guys like the higher point systems that are popping up nowadays?
I don't care. It's all relative, right?
I know enough to know the points are relative, but my thing is some of my home leagues now, and I'm in 3 or 4, we seem to have trouble keeping players. Meaning you have the set 6 or 7 or 8 guys. It's those 3 or 4 that come in every year that we try to get hooked on the sport. After the first year, they either realize, well, hell, I just can't win, or it's harder than I think. What do we do to keep those players playing?
All right. So here's the problem. This is the problem, because doing this for a long time, the reason why fantasy football is the king, and it will always be the king, is because it's the most simplistic in nature, right? So what happens is the guys like us that are on a Wednesday night listening to a podcast, it's too simplistic for us. So we want to change it. Yet the masses don't want to change. They want it simplistic. I think the biggest problem in fantasy football is that every draft follows the ADPs. Everybody does the same things after the first few things. So what I think that we need to do is we need to change up what we do. And I would, first of all, go 2 quarterback leagues. Because 5 years ago, everybody in 2 quarterback leagues would pick quarterbacks in the first round. I see people getting away from that, still waiting on quarterbacks. I see some people still going for quarterbacks early. So all of a sudden now the draft strategy has changed, and we actually have draft strategy. I would get rid of the kickers and the defenses, and I would have 3 flex positions in all my lineups. Then that brings more deviance to the lineups. It brings in different draft strategies. In baseball, we have draft strategy. In basketball, I draft centers early in point guards. I think they're the toughest there. In football, there is no draft strategy. You just do what Matthew Berry tells you.
Amen. I think that's 2 quarterback leagues. I agree. Both of the leagues I commission now, we've done 2 quarterbacks. And I agree. Chuck, do you know, was it the round table we discussed ADP, or might've been one of my shows with Lou, that, I do believe that ADP is, technically it's just a number, and too many people get hooked on it. So when you draft somebody out of line, then, half of your league mates will make fun of you. I can't believe you took him now. You could have got him 8 picks later or something like that. But ADP really is still, and trust me, ADP for football will start in a couple of months. They'll start doing early drafts and start that ADP stuff. Chuck, do you let ADP dictate your drafts when you're drafting? Let's say baseball, which is what we're getting ready to do.
Well, I think I'll do it to see if I can't get a guy a couple rounds later. But if I still like him, if he's projected as, say, like an 8th round player, I don't mind taking him in the 5th round if I really like him.
Tony, let me ask you then this, based on that. Is the problem that most of us don't do enough research and have truly our own ADP or our own, list of players or our own draft board isn't, and then most people, even when they do, they did it because they mocked up somebody else's ADP. Is that where we're lazy, that we're not even doing that much homework?
No, I wouldn't say that. It is in some cases, but I think that basically we found a strategy in the PPR formats that, there ain't enough running backs. So draft running backs early. Then you're going to go with the top flight wide receivers, right? Everybody, 90% of us think that's the strategy to go by. And then we've all learned, hey, you know what? The quarterbacks are never the same. And then the 3rd quarterback to the 12th quarterback every year, there's only 2 points per game difference in. So why draft a quarterback early? And so we all believe that strategy. And so you're only off 1 or 2 players. It just doesn't make any difference. And there's no difference in draft strategy. I think we could have different draft boards, each one of us. It will come up to pretty similar teams because we all believe in the same draft strategy.
Now, back to my initial question a little bit. The issue I have with what you're saying, though, Tony, is still the new player doesn't understand that at all. So it's so that when you start talking like that to a brand new player, again, they quickly go, maybe I don't want to be in fantasy. You know what I'm saying? So, I guess that's still my thing. Do you think these things help a new player by, understanding, the players themselves, or does ADP actually help a new player? Again, my problem is still the new players play 1 year and go, that was too much work, or that didn't work out for me. I came in last, so I don't want to play anymore. Again, I'm still, and maybe that's where I started. My question is, what can we do to get new people into fantasy and keep them into fantasy without them feeling, that it's, that it's too hard?
I don't know about you. I guess I have to disagree. 65 million people play fantasy football. I don't think 65 million people voted. So I don't know if we have that much of a dropout in fantasy football. And there's women that play in the office. Women numbers keep growing every year. So I think people are playing. Hey, it's a circle of life. People aren't good enough to do certain things. They drop out. They probably quit high school. They probably quit their job. They probably quit, their YMCA.
Their YMCA. Now, in the chat room, a couple people said drop kickers and drop defenses. We've had this discussion also. See, I'm the opposite. I have no problem with kickers. I have no problem with defense. I actually believe it helps an advanced player like myself, because in most home leagues, kickers and defenses cause people to make mistakes in the draft. It causes them to make mistakes. I've seen people drop good players because they wanted to pick up a defense. I mean, I just feel keeping kickers and defenses actually gives me an advantage, because again, it's a place where people that are novice players actually make mistakes with those slots. So I don't have a problem with them. The people that tell me they lost a game because of a kicker, I say the same thing. Text me a picture of your lineup. One of your other players, you didn't lose because some kicker scored 15 points last night. You might have lost because he was the last guy going. The odds are one of your other players didn't score enough points. So I'm never one of those that believes that you lost a game necessarily just because the other guy's defense or kicker. But I don't think kickers and defenses, or in baseball, you hear that about catchers, that type thing. In football, some people even question tight ends. I don't have a problem keeping all those, because again, I
got to break in there just because you hit it on the head. All you people out there that don't like two catcher leagues in baseball have to be Democrats and liberals and lazy things in life. And like all those people that write for Fantrax, they're all scum of the earth and don't know anything about fantasy baseball, because the reason why two catchers is important in fantasy baseball is, if you go to one catcher league, just draft catcher with your last pick. They're all the same. But if you have two catchers, you have to decide whether I pick one good one or one at the end of the draft, or I use that position, the two catcher, to get an advantage over the people. This is what I talk about, is that we want to make the draft in scenarios to come in there. And as soon as you go to one catcher leagues, you absolutely ruin draft strategies that people come in with and making it easier for people. Baseball are hardcore people that play fantasy baseball. Never make it easier.
I would agree. I have no problem with two catchers. Dan, what do you in your baseball leagues where you commissioned? Do you do two catchers?
No, we're not doing two catchers, even though I do like the idea of moving to two catchers. Sorry, I'm in a house full of kids right now.
What's for dinner, Chuck? Or what's for dinner, Dan? It sounds like you're feeding the whole family tonight. Chuck, what about you? Do you play in two catcher leagues or two quarterback leagues? Or I know in basketball this year, like I said, you set the basketball league up a little more, strategy because of the big men and that kind of stuff. Do you try to do that when you commission leagues?
Well, I like to do things a little different just to try and see what I do and don't like. So I like to play in multiple websites and things like that and see if I can't take something from, say, Yahoo to bring to our league and things like that. But, I haven't done a two catcher league, and that I'm not against it, but a lot of my buddies just aren't into the thought of it. And what was that?
They're probably Democrats.
They're probably Democrats.
But the two quarterback thing, I'm not the same thing. I'm in a few leagues that do it, but I do feel it does matter how deep your league is. And once you get to, that 14 team leagues and things like that, you can't do two QBs because how many teams are doing, playing without a quarterback starting, because you're going to have two or three.
Hold on. That's incorrect. You have a 14 team league, right?
Yeah.
You don't advertise a two QB league. You have a super flex league, right?
There you go.
So you can play quarterback there. And then the guys, then it adds to the draft, right? Because you got to decide, do I pick 2 quarterbacks? Do I pick 3? Then you pick them earlier. So you get one, and then the other guy gets shafted.
Well,
so that's your strat, right?
That. Well, and that's what I was going to say. If it's a 14 team, it's got to be a super flex because there's going to be the guys that don't get that, second quarterback that they could play, but maybe they can stick a high end RB or wide receiver into it.
But the difference is, though, in 2 quarterback leagues, I've not been in any 2 quarterback leagues where, really any player just kind of punts the quarterback. But in 2 catcher leagues, I've only been in a couple, but even in 2 catcher leagues, I've seen, they'll all in a, 14 team, you'll still see teams that just will grab 2 or 3 catchers at the end of a draft. So, is that just because they don't have the knowledge or don't, they just think it's a catcher, it doesn't matter.
The legend does it a lot too. And here's his thinking, people like him, is that I'm going to take a position, the catcher, 2 catches, right? They probably get 300 at bats each. So that's 600 at bats to compare it to the quarterback who basically holds the football in his hand every single play in the NFL is not the same. And so that's where they go, is the catcher is the least significant offensive position in baseball because they don't play every day. And in fact, if they have another decent catcher, they get 300 to 400 at bats. So if you do throw a position, which I never recommend anyone doing, but if you do, in an auction, you have to do it because you only have so many auction dollars. People go with the strategy of letting go of the catchers.
Right. They just punt that all together and they go with it. When it comes to, well, like I said, hockey and basketball is different because, again, they don't have that one set position or anything like that where the catcher, people will, they'll put the catcher in the same category as a tight end or something like that. But, it's anything else. Like you said, you don't punt a category. I'm sure you can get 2 catchers that can probably win you a category, if not win you a league, if you do it right. I mean, it's just a matter of.
Honestly, NBA, you can kind of punt on center because it's something a lot of centers are going to score a lot of points. So it's more going after your guards and forwards with that. I think, and I'm not sure what it would be with the NHL, but I'm sure there's a position you can kind of punt on it and you're still going to get, a lot of points or categories filled out of it, depending on what your league is with them.
Right. The other issue go ahead, Tony.
9-category NBA league. I've come in first place 3 years in a row. My first 2 picks have been centers both years. Karl Anthony Towns, I picked number 1 overall the last 2 years, not because he's the best player, because that position is not deep. And you have an advantage to me in 2
right,
center.
if you get the game changer guy.
Yeah. So, and he's right there in double-doubles, too. You get close to 50 double-doubles each year. So I go in and I hoard the center position because I don't think it's a position of strength. And I think you see a lot of people back, if we go 5 to 8 years in fantasy baseball, we used to always evaluate the second baseman, the shortstop, higher than the other positions because we thought it was a position of weakness.
Right. Tony, how many do you still do a lot of seasonal leagues in baseball or football? I mean, so you're still in some league, what's the longest running league you've been in?
I usually only play in like the NFBC leagues or Fantrax leagues. So I don't know the people I play against, but they know me.
I got you. Again, and I don't know, that's a little different than most of your average home leagues and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't play against my friends. I want to hate the people I play against.
Well, you know what? But I would miss that. I mean, my 2 most, the leagues I'm in the most that I pay the most attention to, and both are less money than a couple other leagues I'm in, are with people that I deal with, in a weekly, setting. And in some cases, a couple of people I deal with in a daily setting. But we're talking about some of this strategy and all that like it's only a draft thing, but still, isn't that even also a misconception in my mind? That still, there are people out there that they'll put 100% effort into their league up until the draft's over. I've noticed that. I'm amazed at how often I see that. They study, they prepare, they have all this shit come. They draft their team, and then you just kind of watched, they make very few acquisitions. They do very few trades. They set their lineup. It's almost like they think it's 90% draft. I still think it's third, a third. It's the draft, it's your acquisitions, it's your trades, it's your waiver wire. But do you think that's a problem too? That there's still a lot of people that think it's a draft only game?
The funniest thing ever is listening to shows on Sirius XM and fantasy, right? And they talk about waiver wires because none of us ever use the waiver wire because we play in leagues that nobody makes changes, and we do the draft, and guys like Lenny get pissed off about it. But it's the way it is. It's the way it is in the business. When we play in the NFBC leagues, there's no trading involved because the money there, so they don't want any collusion situation. Right. So I think when you guys play in your leagues against your friends and stuff like that, yeah, absolutely, that's there. I started out 0-4 one year. I remember, and I picked up Peyton Hillis and Derek Anderson, 2 Cleveland Browns back in the thing, and I ran the table with those 2 guys. And that was a league that had been around for a while, but I just don't play in those types of leagues anymore. And I think depending on what type of player you are in the high stakes format, those guys think they're the greatest players in the world. Well, you can't be the greatest player in the world. You play in a league that only 10% of America plays in with no trades, no pickups. You use FAB. So I can't say, even though they're winning hundreds of thousands of dollars, they're only playing half the game. Right.
Oh, I agree with that. I don't think I could do it. Again, we talked, shows ago, I would rather lose in my Super Bowl or lose in my semifinal in a league where I made, 20 trades than necessarily win a Super Bowl where I couldn't even make one trade. I mean, that's there's something about getting up on Tuesday morning, now that you have access to start making trades, and all day Tuesday and Wednesday is nothing but a few trade offers. You receive a few trade offers. I mean, man, the leagues I'm in now, hey, I'm not an industry guy. I just, Lenny lets me do this and I appreciate that. But I have got in a few of those leagues with these kind of players where no trades ever happen. They just don't happen. Everyone knows the same thing. You can't steal. There's no buy low, sell high because everyone's on the same playing field. So it's a little harder. But it does take away some of the fun, that wheeling and dealing part. And kind of flipping your whole team. That's why I think I still enjoy the family league, the home league, versus some of those other leagues. Do any of you guys, Dan, I don't know if you're still feeding the kids KFC, but, do you play in leagues where there's no trades or any acquisitions?
Absolutely not, man. Trading are 100% part of fantasy. Yeah, I'm sorry, man. We got a lot of family here doing early.
And that's fine. I'm still going to make fun of you.
No, man. Trades are 100% part of fantasy. That's why I was harping on the, trades getting canceled earlier. I have a big problem with that kind of crap.
Right. What about you, Chuck? Do you keep most of your leagues, your home type leagues? Now, again, the basketball, I come in and out of that league. Now that football's over, I'll commit a little more now. But I haven't noticed any real trading going on yet. I mean, this is the first time I've been in this league with you guys. Is there normally more trading, or is it just this is the kind of league where it's hard to get a deal done?
My leagues for my home leagues, they're kind of hard to get done because everybody goes, oh, I have to win the trade. I have to win the trade. And they have to win it by a mile to make the trade get done. I had some dude offering me for me to give up Kyrie Lowry in one league for 2 guys he picked up off of waivers that are just junk players. And I'm like, why would I do that? He goes, oh, well, your team is 0-4. I don't care. I'd rather go down and lose every game this season than make this trade.
I have no problem losing a trade if it makes my team better. I agree
with that.
And again, you'll listen to, Sirius XM or any other podcast, or I've heard, you'll hear the guy call in and say, hey, should I make this trade? And the host will quickly go, no, that's a terrible trade. I would never make it. But they never ask, and I get it, there's time restrictions and all that, but they never ask details. Sometimes, just throwing out 2 names is not enough to say if that's a good or a bad trade. And I don't care if it's baseball or football or any of those. Sometimes you have to know situations and teams, especially in baseball. It can be just a points thing where if you just throw out 2 names, you definitely would never do it. But if you need steals and you don't need strikeouts anymore, those are trades sometimes you have to make. So, is that part of the problem too, that it's just a sport or a game or I don't even know what we call fantasy that, sometimes it's just hard to explain or give someone enough information to know if it really is a good trade or not.
Well, and a lot of times I do feel that's the issue because I really looked at trading a lot different once I've, figured out about Lenny and everything when he started going into that much depth of, well, who you dropping, who are you adding? And he would ask more about those details on your trades with it. But like I said, when I sit there and do it with my buddies, they don't, think about anything of that. They just, well, I have to get the best player. I have to get, otherwise I won't trade. I'm not going to make a trade. I've told you this before. I'm in a league that this guy goes, well, I'm not trading. I don't make trades. So you don't want to try to win. And he's consistently in the playoffs, but he's getting knocked out in the first round. And I've been in leagues with him for probably about 3 years, and he hasn't won a league, but I want to say not at 90, probably about 75% of the time he's in the playoffs. And that one trade probably could make him win the league.
Right. Tony, do you play any best balls? And at some point, in football, and I know baseball, that it's not as common to have best ball type setups, but in football, I mean, if you're going to be in leagues where you can't trade or do anything, technically, isn't that just a best ball league and you just forget about waivers and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I play in a lot of best ball leagues, to tell you the truth. And I'm going to give it up for Fantrax. I don't like the site. I don't like the people. But they have a best ball format for baseball over there right now.
I heard that.
And here's what they did. You draft 40. It's points. It's not categories. And they actually took the 50-50 too. So if you just like the draft, you play in a $10 league. The first 5 get $20. And it's great for me, I think. I think it's great. I do one every day.
See, I do best ball mainly just to get the draft experience. And then obviously at the end of the season, you might win a few bucks. To me, I like those sometimes more than doing, random, no money involved, live mock drafts is just a waste of time, in my opinion, where a best ball, at least there's some money involved. So, I think I'm that way. But again, would you prefer that over? I mean, is that a way to play, though, instead of doing a league with no trades? Isn't best ball a measuring stick for knowledge of the game? I find that especially in baseball and being on Lenny's site for 3 years and watching that. I mean, baseball people are a little crazy about wanting to be the person who knows the most about every player. Is baseball seasonal or DFS? Which way is maybe the best to really say who knows the most?
I don't think there's any way. I used to think back in the day that it was AL only and NL only. I was a firm believer
because of the depth of players.
Yeah, because anyone could pick superstars there. But here's what I found out after doing it for a long time: the people that win AL and NL only are knowledgeable, but they're also the luckiest people in the world because there's nobody on the waiver wire. So if you get injuries, there's no way to come up for it. Someone will say you can make 3 for 1 trades, 2 for 1 trades, but there's luck involved there. Best ball, you got to be careful here because there's different best ball varieties. So at Fantrax, it takes the highest points in each week. They insert them in lineups. There's no pickups. There's no lineup changes there. The NFBC runs a little different. They run a 15-team league, 50 players on a team, and you have to put your lineup in every week. You can't pick up any players. You can't trade, but you have to put in a lineup every week. So then it gets down to roster construction. How many pitches do I need if I only get 50 players? How many catches do I need if I only get 50 players? How many 2-position players all of a sudden become more valuable? Are there any 3-position players out there that I should get because I can't pick up any on the waiver wire? So that draft and that strategy all becomes different. So I don't think there's a way to get the #1 fantasy baseball player out there. I think it's a guy that wins an abundance of leagues, and it probably changes from year to year.
Right. So it's a hard thing to measure, period. In my opinion. Chuck, when it comes to your basketball league, or even your baseball leagues, do you find that the same people in your leagues are always winning, or does it rotate pretty regularly?
It's usually between the same couple of people that win it because everybody likes to say how knowledgeable and everything they are. I can remember when I first jumped into the basketball league with a bunch of my buddies, it's an older thing that we're sitting there all in the same room, even though we all have a computer on our lap. And I start just bullshitting with them, just saying how Kirk Heinrich was in the league at the same time as Jordan. And they're, oh, no, he wasn't. I'm like, you guys are basketball guys. I'm not. Why is it that I know this?
Right.
So I think it struck that fear into them. Well, just because I pay attention to one sport doesn't mean anything. There's people out there that really know. They might really know baseball and they do well with football, or they might really know football. They can do well with baseball. So being the most knowledgeable, first of all, you're never going to know who it is, but it's kind of irrelevant.
I also believe being knowledgeable about baseball or football or basketball and all that really doesn't even translate to fantasy. I feel fantasy is a game, that's totally different anyway.
I totally agree. I think the best fantasy players are great at every sport. Like Adam Ronis,
right?
Guys, listen to him on Sirius XM. Every league I play in, Adam Ronis is in the top 3. It doesn't matter what sport, whatever. He's one of the guys that is always there
because he's a fantasy player.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's why, hey, my Twitter account is a fantasy fan because that's what I bring to the table. I studied the fantasy part of it. I don't know, that a pitcher's release point is off. I can't tell you that somebody's got launch angle. That's the legend's job to tell me that stuff. I can listen to a million podcasts and hear all that stuff, but fantasy is a different game. Yes, is there, and Dan said it earlier, he likes that he has more knowledge and he thinks that makes him a better player. Just because I know, I know people, just because you know all 52 cards in the deck and you can memorize them all doesn't make you a good poker player, or anything like that. I mean, there's, and same with, you can be a Texas Hold'em player, doesn't make you a good stud player. I mean, there's people that can do both, but there's never, it's usually not the best person, and that's my point. I'm not sure fantasy is a good measure of someone's baseball knowledge. Or football knowledge.
I think the more depth you have between the sports is what makes you the better player with them.
Right. I mean, the other day, and I'll get Chris Collinsworth is one of the few football announcers that you'll hear once in a while mention fantasy, during a broadcast. Pardon?
He owns what's it? Football Perspectives, right?
Right. But the other day, even he said something, it was like 3 weeks ago. I can't even remember the player. It was one of the random players that went off, a no-name guy, and Chris did make the comment. He goes, oh, all you fantasy players are excited he scored again. And in my mind, I'm like, any good fantasy player doesn't even have him on his bench, let alone in his lineup.
Derrick Henry.
Well,
I would assume Derrick Henry for that one.
No, this was a few weeks back. It was another, I'm trying to even remember. But my point was, yes, if you had him in your lineup, that was great that night. But if you had him in your lineup, you didn't know what you were doing, because again, it's two different things. Knowing football or knowing baseball, and then knowing how to use that information to be good at fantasy. And that's why I don't like taking out the trade parts and all that. I know big money leagues have to do things so that there isn't collusion, when there's that kind of money. But, being able to negotiate and make deals and build a team, I just, when you take that away, it changes. To me, it's not the same. It is now you are talking the difference between stud or Omaha or Hold'em. I mean, it's a different game when you say, okay, we're going to have a league and no trades, in my opinion.
Well, I think the big difference of it is also that we've all played so long, we've all burned ourselves and came out on the winning end of so many trades. We kind of know an idea of what's good and bad to do with them.
Right. I guess I'm going to round this. We'll finish this topic on the original question, which is what I would change in fantasy. One of the things, especially in home leagues, I would change is I like the idea that we have trades, but man, I got to figure out a way to get rid of just terrible, shitty trade offers. It seems like every league has that one guy that will throw out 75 trade offers and all 75 get rejected because they're horrible, and your phone beeps 10 times a day and you go, oh, a trade offer from so-and-so. And you're like, you almost don't even want to look at it because it's going to be ridiculous.
It's the buckshot approach. Same approach they take to hitting on girls.
It's asinine. So my next little topic here is season-ending awards. As a fantasy player, because I count myself more of a fantasy player than a sports guy. I just don't care. Is that wrong? Fantasy in the season awards in any sport. You know what? Golden Glove, Cy. I just don't care. Doesn't, I know there's a lot of debates on sports talk. I know Lenny's baseball chat room gets pretty excited and wound up when it comes to some of these awards, but in the long and short of it, does it really matter? I mean, what's the big deal? Who's back to my who just got in the Baseball Hall of Fame that everyone's up in arms about?
Harold Baines.
Right. I don't care. I mean, is that wrong? And I'm a sports guy. I watch everything. I got 8 TVs, but I don't care. Anybody else's opinion on season-ending awards and some of these accolades these players have, I get it that it's good for them and they want it, and it's good for you numbers people, but I just don't get the hoopla. It doesn't wind me up one bit.
Easy. I think it goes back to a point you were making earlier about brand new fantasy players. I think it's something to help keep them interested and help them understand who is decent, because that's a good outlier way to be able to go and look and say, okay, well, I know Tom Brady's good because he won an MVP, or I know so-and-so is good because he won the MVP, etc.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm just asking. As a fantasy player, does it even matter?
Nope.
Yeah,
as a person in life, doesn't matter, right? I mean, how the hell? What am I going to learn from Harold Baines being in the Hall of Fame and Barry Bonds not?
Okay, right. I give you that. I'm a Pete Rose guy. I'm just sitting here a little north of Cincinnati. So
Pete Rose is the only guy that doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame and should never be in the Hall of Fame. And I think it's asinine for people to even bring up the subject of him being in the Hall of Fame, because as we spoke about earlier in the show with the gambling situation, that's the one thing that could destroy sports if we have some of these guys involved in those situations. So what Pete Rose did, I think, is the only thing that's unforgivable in sports. And everybody's gonna say, well, he didn't bet on his own team. Well, how do you get that information? Are you believing Pete Rose? He's lied about it for 20 effing years.
Well,
right?
hold on then.
Yeah. Well,
Tony, you're bringing up.
I've got a better point to that.
I'm just going to sit back.
We all know Jordan is this huge gambler. Who's to say he didn't gamble on anything that he was a part of when he was playing? So he should be revoked from the Hall of Fame then.
No, you can't revoke without proof. I don't think it's the same as with the steroids. I don't think these guys that never fail a drug test should all be in the Hall of Fame, as long as they didn't fail a drug test. And based on our allegations here, I do believe Michael Jordan was suspended for 1 year by the NBA and David Stern for gambling, and that's why he played for the Chicago White Sox minor league team. And I think that David Stern did a great job and didn't want to throw the NBA under the bus and announced that Michael Jordan was suspended, and that is my belief.
Yeah, I
would
think
agree with that.
In this day and age, with as high as player contracts are going to be, when Pete Rose was playing in the 70s, guys weren't making $40 million for doing jack shit. And I think if you're going to see this going to be a problem in the future with someone affecting the game, it's going to be from a referee standpoint, kind of like what you saw with the NBA 10 or 15 years ago.
No.
100%.
I can prove wrong in 42 seconds. It's already been done. Lenny Dykstra, right, has set the tone, right? He's the one with the umpires, right? He would have a private investigator follow the umpires around, and he would talk to him in his first plate appearance about the girl they were with on the road. So all I have to do is I take Roger Clemens, right? He's in a bar. I throw something in his drink. I put him in a hotel room with a girl. Videotape it. With a man, even better. Videotape it. Now, Roger, you got a game against the New York Mets. I'm going to release this video or you're going to lose. I could do this every time to any player you want.
All right. I agree. I think there's enough money now, though, in most sports where gambling isn't the problem it would have been even in Pete Rose's era. I don't argue for it. I'm a Pete Rose guy. I grew up in Cincinnati.
Money won't matter when it comes to getting divorced.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Well, and I did actually hear something about the Mayweather-McGregor fight, that Mayweather wasn't allowed to put a bet on himself that he was going to beat McGregor.
That's true.
I've heard now. I mean, you always hear there's always fantasy football leagues, going on in all these baseball clubhouses, so obviously they don't consider that gambling, but I never ever once have heard them talk about a baseball league in a football clubhouse? Is it because football players could care less about baseball or fantasy? I mean, you hear it all the time, where they say, oh, the Yankees, there's a group in the Yankees clubhouse that, has a fantasy football league.
Scott Engel actually does a lot of fantasy work for a lot of professional players. Scott got me involved giving DFS basketball information to a Major League Baseball player. I used to give him a write-up every day. I used to call him on the phone before the games, and I know Scott does it for 5 or 6 different players.
Huh? That's neat. Well, but is that not considered? I mean, there are people that do think fantasy sports is gambling. So obviously, does that not fall in? Again, I know in baseball you hear it all the time. So obviously in baseball they'll let you play fantasy sports, but obviously, and I like what you said about P. Rose. Yeah, Chuck, I think, is the one who said it, that he didn't bet on anything but the Reds. The problem they always said though is that the bookies knew the days Pete didn't bet was the same as him betting against the Reds, so that was the flaw in to me in that argument is, that he bet so much that when he didn't bet, they knew that was the day that, they also knew to lay off. So, I don't have a say. To be honest, it doesn't bother me one way or the other. The steroid thing's a little different. I believe now we have enough proof that so many people were actually on steroids that you just should let them in. They were competing against other players that were on steroids personally. So, it's not like it was just 10 of them. But, I'm guessing that number, and I've heard different things, that it was enough of them that, it was kind of an even playing field at some point.
And actually, back to a little bit on fantasy, I don't remember if the player's name was ever released, but some running back, his fullback, was playing fantasy, and they called something about on the 1 yard line for him to get in. The fullback, who was whatever team he was playing, had that running back on his team, and he turned around, looked at his running back, and smiled, and he looks at him and goes, "You better fucking block for me."
Now, so is that true or rumor? That sounds like something you just hear.
And that's the thing. Who knows whether or not
on the round table we only talk facts. We don't delve in those those things. But more important, believe it or not, Tony, we've never met. This is like a trick. We've never talked ahead of time, maybe 5 minutes. But you said something that it was one of the few topics I kind of had on here that was non-sports, and it's all one line in a song right now, and that's "Baby It's Cold Outside," this Dean Martin song that all these damn radio stations are not playing because now they're all convinced this is a date rape, song, all because in one line the woman says, "What?" She says, "What's in this drink?" That's all she says. The only thing in this whole song, I've got all the words written here. There's one line where she says, "What's in this drink?" And I've now heard a couple of, shows where they've analyzed this, that it's definitely a date rape song. Been married a long time, but in the days when I used to date, every date started with a goal in my head. There was a goal, there was a target, and you kind of went there. But a song written in the 40s, is it right that we ban a song because there's one line that someone, is questioning that, he might have slipped something into her drink? A song we've been listening to my whole life. Anybody have? None of you care. It pisses me off nowadays that we, hashtag enough, I think is what AA would say. I don't know. Have we gone too far on what we're banning?
We have absolutely gone too far, because here's the thing, and I won't make this funny, I'll make this real, is that because of that song being out there and that question being about that song, you as a parent could actually use that to discuss that with your child or your teenager as, like, when you get 21, You know, you go out and have a drink, have a good time, but you got to protect yourself at all times because there are people out there that are bad and they put things in the drink. And then some of these guys end up being on TV and they end up being a father for America, like Bill Cosby, right? And he's the guy that you think is the guy that would never do such a thing. But when you go to the bathroom, bring your drink in the bathroom with you. Never leave your drink at the bar because this stuff happens. Back in the day when I was growing up, I thought we only had the Spanish fly. It's a lot worse than that.
Nowadays, I mean, hey, and I'm not saying it even in a, okay, funny is not the case necessarily. It's just, you know, I have a mother, I have a wife, and I have a daughter. I realize the only thing I don't bring to this, you know, is that I'm not a woman. So I'm just saying this one line in this song can be taken that way. But she also could be saying, what's in this drink? Is this vodka, tequila? What did you put in here? You know, I mean, it doesn't necessarily, I'm just saying the arguments I have heard are people, they immediately are saying he slipped a drug in there that she knows nothing about. I'm sorry, it doesn't say that. You know, the word doesn't even say that. The sentence doesn't say that. Can it be a learning thing? Sure. It's just, you know, I mean, we just read stuff into things that, I don't know. Like I said, the song's been around since the 40s, and we read something into it. One line of, you know, I should have counted them. You know, the song has multiple. It's not one of those songs that repeats the same line over and over. He's a guy on a date trying to do what most men start a date to do. I don't argue that men can be animals because we are. End of story. You know, we're put on this earth as like any other animal to recreate. That's pretty much our human nature. But
my point of it would be, and obviously I wouldn't have an idea, what did they have back in the 40s you could have slipped in somebody's drink to put them in that situation compared to now?
Okay, again, you and Tony are both going the same thing. That I'm saying I don't even think it was intended that way. Other than, hey, what's in my drink? You know, I mean, it's a little bit of vodka, maybe. That's my point.
That's what I'm trying to say, though. Is
I don't know.
Everybody's saying this drug. It could be this drug. Well, what drugs were really that popular then? There was no roofies or anything that I know of.
I'm sure in the 40s there was stuff. I mean, Bill Cosby, I think
we're definitely going too far with this, guys.
Whatever.
I don't know if you've ever watched any movie from the 40s or 50s. And my wife watches a lot of them. So I sit in on it from time to time. And the one thing that always sticks out to me is the guys in the movies, they're very what would be considered almost stalkerish now with the ladies. You know, they'll get turned down. Oh, come on, gal, you know, and they'll go back again and convince them eventually, you know, they want to be with them and stuff. But it was the culture and it was the time it was, and we need to accept that. And I don't think it needs to be read into any more than that.
Do I need to accept Lou Reed?
No, you don't have to. I'm just saying. I just know, like I said, it's a big deal. It's a Christmas song. Walmart isn't playing it anymore. I just, upset me a little bit. All right. Just quick. How many of you are still, I think, Chuck, are you in any Super Bowls? Are you still playing fantasy football?
I'm in 2.
2 Super Bowls?
Yes. And the one I'm actually most happy about, I go in down by a point with Cam Newton playing, who puts up a whopping 4.7 points. But it still won me the match.
All right. Well, good luck. Wish you luck. Dan, what about you? Do you have a Super Bowl team? You said 1, I think, right?
I am down to my lone Super Bowl team. Buddy boy Dave beat me in the other playoff match I was in. So, yeah, it's been a tough season for me all around.
All right. Tony, what about you? You got any? Are you still in any season-long leagues or anything where you have any action this weekend?
Yeah, I got 1, and then of course I love DFS, and then it's a crazy time of year. It's a lot to be thankful for. We got New Year's resolutions coming up, so you got a lot of focus to put on yourselves this week. A lot of people dealing with relatives and stuff like that, and I always like to start out, at the table. I'll never forget it. I always start out at the table. Another year gone by, going to be 50 years old and don't suffer from erectile dysfunction. What are you guys thankful for? And it gets quiet right there. You don't have to
said that you don't or do?
I don't.
Okay, that's good.
No, I mean, okay. Sure. Before we get ready to go, I don't do it. I'm not a superstition person. I'm not a New Year's resolution person. And I have enough faults where I probably should maybe practice that a little bit. Chuck, this will be our last show, unfortunately, because Tuesday we got Christmas next Tuesday, New Year's Day the following Tuesday. So this will be the last show till next year. Are you a superstition person? And are you a New Year's resolution guy?
I've never been really either. I mean, when I played baseball, I would have a little bit of superstition just because, you feel you get that good streak going. Something else has to be causing it. It just can't be you seeing the ball well. But other than that, I really, I'm not going to walk around, oh, this is my lucky underwear type thing, anything like that.
Well, I mean, my argument would be, no, you were seeing the ball well. It wasn't nothing to do with your dirty shorts. I just can't. I don't buy any of the superstition stuff. Dan, what about you? Are you a superstition guy, a New Year's resolution guy?
Not personally, but from my theory with superstitions, I believe that if a player believes that if something's working for them, then it actually is.
Okay, now that I don't argue. I mean, I do believe, in the state of mind, and yes, if you believe that eating mom's bean soup before you start pitching the next day is good for your game, then all right. But at the same time, I'm not sure I'd gamble a lot on that guy, if that's the only thing he's got going for him. But Tony, you said something about New Year's resolutions. Are you a superstition guy?
No, I used superstition for a whole season of football not to wash my uniform because I just didn't really feel like taking it home. And it smelled so bad by the end of the year that it would actually keep people from trying to tackle me. And I had a hole. You could see my whole ass out of my
Okay.
I was superstitious, but I just didn't want to wash my uniform.
Okay, you. What group of football are we talking here? Is this?
This was high school. In
high school football. You decided to. Now, did it work? Did you go undefeated? I mean, what were you?
We lost once every year. We lost once every year. For all my Massachusetts people out there, we used to lose to Brockton on Thanksgiving. That would be the only time we lost. But football was fun back then. It taught you a lot about being part of a team, being a part of a group, and all working for the same goal. It taught you how to fuck with people, and I was really good at it. I would take people's lockers off their lock and put it on other people's locks, and the idiots couldn't figure out that it was the other person's lock that was on there. And two of the captains went home with their football clothes on because they were so stupid. They didn't know it was each other's lock.
Are we talking linemen?
Yeah. One was linebacker.
I mean, I get that. And now I see it in all, but is it, do I just, it seems like superstition is more a baseball thing than other sports. Is that just me not paying enough attention, or is baseball have more superstition as a history of the game?
It's people from outside the country. I think like New Orleans, a lot of voodoo people are in a superstition. I think Dominican Republic, those people are in a superstition.
Okay, that's true. I guess I didn't think of it as a culture.
The Cubans get on a raft and fight sharks on the way to the United States to play baseball. There got to be some superstitions and some luck involved there.
Okay. I did not think it through enough, I guess. I will give you that. I'm trying to think. I think it was Sparky Anderson. He wouldn't step on the, when I grew up, Sparky Anderson would not step on the white line, whenever we go out to meet a pitcher one way. He was pretty superstitious that way. I remember, I don't know if superstition was the bird, the Fidrich. Was he a superstition guy or just nuts? Tony, were you around for the Mark Fidrich?
He's from North Attleboro, Massachusetts. He actually died from changing a tire. He had the car.
What? All right. Give me the details. I did not know this.
Yes, the car fell down on him. So if he was superstitious, he wasn't very lucky.
Okay.
He could talk to the baseball. He could change a tire.
Now, we talked last week about players in any sport that we would make sure we watched. And I got to tell you, that little run he had,
yep.
I'm too old. Detroit Tigers, right?
Detroit Tigers, yep. Unbelievable.
I mean, I would not miss one. And I mean, I don't know your age. I think me and you are probably close. I mean, it was hard for me to get we didn't get baseball back then like we do now. But if Mark Fidrich was pitching and I could find a TV where he was on, I would watch. I wanted to watch him pitch.
It was him and Fernando Valenzuela back in the day.
Yeah.
Those were the two that you would try to get. And you were right. You would hope that the game would be on Monday Night Baseball because we get Monday night and we get Saturday afternoon.
Saturday, right.
Be local. and that's all we had. And you would hope one of those two guys would pitch it.
Right. Turk Wendell, Malpal saying Turk Wendell was crazy superstitious. It seems like managers, and I'm sure most managers were players at one time, seems like a lot of managers back in the 70s and 80s were, pretty superstitious. But yeah, Mark the Bird Fidrich was definitely one of those characters that, and again, that was my original question. You said he wasn't superstitious, but he just had so many awkward things he would do on the mound. I remember my dad was the opposite. My dad was like, my dad was a baseball purist and just thought the guy was, he shouldn't even be on the field if he's going to act like that. I found him as a young kid entertaining and what player do we have nowadays that would maybe fit in that? Do we even have one? Is there another player in the last 10 or 15 years that was even come close to what Mark Fidrich did?
The last guy, it was the mad Hungarian, Al Hrabosky. He was the reliever back in the Cardinals, and he would talk to the
Cardinals.
Slam it in there. But, I did remember one superstition. When I was in 7th or 8th grade and started going out with girls, I was always worried about my staying power, right?
Gotcha.
So I would always, beat the meat before I met them, so I would have longer staying power.
So I guess that could be a superstition. I mean, if you believe it, like Chuck said, as long as if the player believes in it, I think that's positive thinking.
Well, I mean, one of the things we had back when I was in high school was before a game, nobody was allowed to blow a nut before the 24 hours before the game to give you the extra energy.
Yeah. I mean, I do remember that going from back in my day, back from, rec baseball or whatever, rec baseball, you weren't allowed to swim 48 hours before you played, which I'm pretty sure now is bullshit. And then when you get into high school, your coach, it was opposite. He didn't give a shit if you swam, but no sex before the game. And I'm not even sure now that's a thing. Now you hear players say the opposite, that, a couple of times in 24 hours, gets the blood pumping. I don't really know. I don't know if there's an answer.
I used to hear Ronda Rousey. She said, I don't know who said this, but somebody was saying she used to get pounded before every fight just to get her blood going.
She got pounded on her last 2 fights, but that's okay.
This was a different kind of pounding too.
I'm just saying. I don't know what now. Is it even on? Was it Fox or ESPN? Who had the sports science show on that was like a half hour where they would, show the speed of a baseball and how to hit it or tackle whatever? Was that like called?
I think it was Fox initially, and then
it was called Sports Science or something like that.
Yeah, Sports Science.
So have we done a sports science on does sex or swimming before a sport really matter at all? Maybe I'd be curious if that's something that's documented or not. I don't know. So, all right. So none of us are really superstition nor care. I know Lou was superstition. He did not shave his beard until the Cowboys lost. And, that actually went for a while. And then he did shave this week. So, he's over that. So,
well, he could start growing it again for another week till Sunday.
All right. Before we go, again, we'll be back before Super Bowl, but we won't be back before teams. Who are going to be the last couple teams to get in the NFL, Chuck? Are the Ravens going to get in? I know the Browns still have a little shot. What's going to happen now in our NFL?
Well, I don't see the Browns making it.
Me neither.
Obviously, it's such a long
Browns
shot.
are the truth.
But would you not like that though? Would it not be cool that Pittsburgh and the Ravens lose the next 2 weeks and the Browns win and they sneak in? Would that not?
The Browns are playing Cincinnati this week. Pittsburgh has a tough matchup this week, don't they?
Yeah, it's still possible. It's still a possibility that the Browns. I'm trying to think. Have the Bengals won 1 or 2 games since we got Hugh Jackson, and the Browns have just maybe lost 1 since they got rid of Hugh Jackson. So obviously. I just hope
it's just the NFL kryptonite.
Yeah, he's a piece of trash.
Unfortunately, I'm afraid he might be the Bengals' next head coach. I'm hoping not. All right.
Sorry.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up. We went a little over an hour and a half tonight. I appreciate all of you coming out. The chat room was pretty active. here the Legend Sports Network, Lenny Melnick, fantasysports.com, the website, the chat room. We have a blast. Lenny will be on tomorrow morning, the Legend at 9:00. He was going to join us tonight. He kept saying, Tony is going to be on, I'm going to be on. And then I'm pretty sure he ended up sleeping. So, maybe Tony, he just didn't want to, get in your way. He's pretty argumentative sometimes. But
No way.
We've got him on
about 500 shows with the guy. He's the best, and it's great what he's trying to do here. And it was good to come on and talk some sports with you guys and have a few laughs. And it's great what you guys got, a little community here, and hopefully it continues to build, because it's something that people like. You get there and talk about sports. Like you talk about the bar atmosphere with this show and where people get the opportunity to go to a bar in there. Well, a lot of people get up there in age, you probably drank too much growing up and you probably lost a few brain cells. This is the way you keep a couple brain cells that you have left and still talk sports.
Well, you know what? It must have been a good show, Chuck. I didn't pick up my beer once today. It's still sitting here. My Heineken is still sitting right here. I didn't grab it one time.
There you go. You just made up for that.
Yeah, there we go. So, and that's what I tell people. This is, and I've told Lenny's asked a few times what the idea of the show was. And I'm like, I do this show for the chat room people. We sit in there and we type, we type little words to each other. And sometimes it's hard to get, opinions through on a one sentence text or something like that in a chat room. So I said, I'm going to start a show where anybody in the chat room can click on the link and join us. I think we've had shows, Chuck, where we've had 8 or 9 people at one time. And we've had shows where there was 2 of us. And, it's coming, enjoy the chat room that Lenny has. It's great. I'm in there quite a bit. All of us are. Tony, I know you've been in there here recently, and that's been great. But this show is just another way for us in the chat room to get together and talk sports. I mean, it's, there's nothing better than talking sports with other sports people, rather than, my kids are now gone a little bit, just being the wife. She doesn't give a shit. So, gets me away from her for an hour and a half. And, so it's fun. We have a good time here. But Lenny has only made it one time, and I think he checked out about 45 minutes, didn't he, Chuck? He hung in there for about 45 minutes, and then it hit his bedtime. He's got to get up and read newspapers at 3:30 in the morning, Tony. He can't, he can't stay up too late.
Well, I do think he did fall asleep a little bit at the beginning of that show, too.
Yes. Yeah, Tony?
I did a 24-hour telethon one time with Lenny and Paul Greco, and we all had shifts except for Lenny was supposed to be on all 24 hours. And I think he made it like 22 hours and 15 minutes. And we only heard 20 minutes of snoring on the line. But the best part ever is that.
So you were all on telephones. That's got to be even harder because you're not even in a room with somebody.
Oh, yeah. For all the people out there on Sirius XM, we were never in the same. Right. I was in Florida. Lenny was in his house in New York. And we were doing the radio shows. And it tells you how good we were at doing what it was, but it was just all for everybody out there that just starting. It's just practice. I mean, Lenny will tell you, you go back and you listen to shows that you did 5 years ago and you're horrified at how bad that they are now, but you thought they were the greatest thing in the world. And it's just practice and repetitions.
Well, technology's gotten better even, like you said early on, I think you guys were probably all using T1s and high-speed internet stuff and phone systems where you did sound like you were in the same room. And, there's still people to this day that don't think that's, my mom would be one of those. She's 85. She'd go, they had to all be in that room, right? No, Mom, we were all somewhere else. It's even like this show. No one's here together. And that's what's nice. We now have similar technology in our own, rooms now that we can do something like this.
I used to fly during the NFL season every Saturday night to New York because my show would be on TV on Sundays. So I actually had a fly to New York. I would leave at 6:40 from Jacksonville. I get to New York at 10 o'clock. I do the show at 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. And then this website, like using your laptop, was all took its place, and we were able to do it like this. So for 2 years, I was taking planes, and then all of a sudden, man, you can use Skype and you can use Google Hangouts.
Right.
You can be on TV.
Right. And I've done both. Hey, I've only been doing this a year. Lenny put this in my head, and then so yes, I'm not, a year, I'm far from, I listened to shows just 2 weeks ago and I'm go, man, I was horrible this 2 weeks ago. But, it's just, I've done this where I don't see people. and I tell people, some people don't want to come on because they're afraid of the camera. And I tell them, don't, turn the camera off. I don't care. Don't not come on because of a camera. But man, I find it so much easier when I can look at somebody to communicate with them than just voice. But the technology we have today to do these type things, and for Lenny to be able to do what he's doing and allowing us to do it is just a great thing. I mean, it's hey, you can't have enough sports talk out there, in my opinion. And hopefully, like I said, shows like this, what I try to bring on my few shows is something a little different. Because again, I'm not an expert. I'm just a fantasy player, and I just have my opinions. And hey, and I bought a microphone, so I'm going to give them. So, So
now we are all stuck listening.
Yeah, you're all stuck with me. Whatever, Chuck. Damn it, you show up every Tuesday night. I mean, what can I say? But I appreciate all of you coming out today. Chuck, when's your next show, real quick?
As far as
Monday
I know,
nights?
we're still doing one on Monday. I'm going to get with Andrea to see if we are going to do it, since that would be Christmas Eve.
All right. Dan, what do you got coming up? Football show, right?
Football show, Thursday, 11 p.m. Eastern.
All right. And Tony, I know you just told me something next year. Is that where we're going to leave it?
No. I got to ask you guys if this will work. I'm actually going to do this. This ain't bullshit. You ready?
Okay.
I'm going to do it this week. I'm going to put a sign on, and it's going to say, need Christmas presents, $1 a joke. And I'm going to sit at the 95 exit. Do you think I can get $100?
I've heard the people that just sit on the side with a sign that says, I need food, can make that kind of money. So I think a good joke teller should be able to get $100.
So I gotta write 15 jokes that are okay with kids in the car, and then I'm gonna do it by Friday. So next time we do the show, I'll have something to report. I'm trying to get a video camera out there.
Okay, that was my next question. Is this gonna be videoable? That would be nice.
Yeah, we're trying to figure that out.
Okay, now wait a minute. Now, what a tripod with a cell phone with Hangouts on it? We might be able to do something live. You let me know when you might do it, and you find a tripod and put your iPhone out there with Hangouts.
We get a GoPro and you can post it.
Yeah, GoPro, but a cell phone though, you can just boom Hangouts. We could be live right away, and I would. I think I gotta say, Tony, that's good. I think I drive the highway every day. I get off on 2 major exits, and there's. Even in Ohio in the winter, I just want to roll the window down in the winter and say, buddy, move to Arizona, go to Florida. If you're going to be homeless, Ohio's not the place. And you had 6 good months to get there. But I think I would be more willing to roll that window down if it said, I will tell a joke for $1. I think.
If I don't give the money usually, and I don't think. But if someone was out there, I'd have to hear the joke. I would have to do it.
I think if anything else for research, this would be more than entertaining. And I think if you did it right, it's $1 for a clean joke and $2 for a dirty joke, and let the parents decide.
You can upsell the jokes. I like that.
I do believe, because even with my kids in the car, I go, all right, give me $2. My kids will be all right for a few minutes. I was one of those fathers that believed my children weren't going to learn about dirty words on the playground. So I taught them very early all the dirty words. I have a lot of bad habits, and cursing is right up there. So my kids did hear them all. So a dirty joke is nothing that I'd have a problem with my kids in the car. So I would pay the $2 even. And, you got me.
With you. I would pay the $2 to hear it too.
And if I'm trying to picture, I kind of know the area a little bit. That's a pretty big, that's a pretty big intersection. So I'm assuming the flow should be pretty good. And you think 15 jokes is enough to get you through through an afternoon, maybe?
No, I need 15 clean jokes. I got plenty of
dirty jokes.
Yeah, dirty jokes, edgy jokes. I need the, I got to, in case the school bus stops.
I got you. Now, also, is there a time? You'd have to have a time issue, right? Because you'd have to know when the red light, green light. You'd have to go, okay. Unfortunately, that would be the work part. You'd have to go, oh shit, the light's getting ready to change. I got to tell the quick joke.
Yeah, that's exactly. You got to have a few one-liners out there. You gotta have
Nothing's as easy as we think, is it?
Yeah, like for all the people that are afraid of commitment, I would just go, you afraid of commitment? Till death do us part was a long time, so I married a smoker.
Okay. All right. I think that's good. Now, Tony, again, I listened to you years ago. How many years were you on Sirius?
2010 to 2017.
All right. And I've been listening pretty much the whole time then. And then I know you were at FNTSY for a while. I listened to you there a little bit.
Were there any other shows besides me when we first started?
No.
I think I was on 24 hours a day.
Yeah, I would agree. You were on all the time. And I enjoyed you. I enjoy all the old group. I hate to put it that way, back in the day with Lenny and all those. And
I think they all did, including Mike Cardano, who runs the station.
Right. Oh, I see where you're going with that. Andrea, are you in?
Hi.
There you go. I
How'd
saw
you know it was me?
Oh, yeah. Like I had to really work hard on what the picture was. The clown's gone.
Well, that's
now, Tony,
that's DVD, actually. I like it, though. That's
DVD come up with it?
No,
Tony,
I found him on the internet. That's a picture of him watering his plants.
I got you. Tony, are you still doing stand-up? I know that's what you used to talk about every once in a while. Do you still do any of that?
I did a couple benefits to raise money for people.
Okay.
And that's about all I've done.
Pretty much every word that runs out of your mouth is a fucking comedy show.
Now, Andrea, have you been listening tonight? We had a pretty good show tonight.
I actually didn't get to listen. I was quite annoyed when I started to fiddle around trying to get my shit together to get on here. And I hear you guys saying, okay, see you later. I'm like, that's weak.
What do you mean it's not weak? You're the problem. You come on after 2 hours. We're on 2 hours before you even pop on. And some of us,
I know you've already
have to go to bed.
All this shit. You have to be nice to me because I live here. But, here's the thing. I just wanted to say hi. I'm so glad to see Tony C, hanging out with the dudes.
Right. The round table has cred now. We've had Lenny and
hold on.
We've had
Tony
the legend.
Gives us cred?
Well, I mean, I've had the legend already. Tony, you know what? Do you have it?
Tony named him the legend. You know that's how he got the legend?
No.
Literally, Tony named him that. One day on just random, he just said, Lenny's a legend. And all of a sudden, it was like this. Lenny decided he was the legend from then on. I mean, Tony
I got you.
Put his idea in his head. So
I see. He bought into the story and just said, I'm going to ride this one out. All right.
Are you kidding me? Wouldn't you? He's a legend.
All right. Hey, I'm son of legend. I've got things to work on. I mean, I'm trying.
Like what? Never mind.
I don't know.
Never mind. Where's Rocky? How's Rocky?
Rocky. Oh God. Thank God he went home. Rocky went home.
Why
he wore me out tonight. Oh, because he won't stop playing with Grandpa. He wears my ass out.
Aren't they lazy though, dude? I mean, they can only last for so long. Their legs are so short. They don't have a lot of energy.
Right. I'm teaching him to play baseball. He's catching a tennis ball all the time now. He will always.
No.
Yes.
No fucking bulldog is playing baseball, dude.
Nope.
Sorry.
I'll get it on video. I throw
Okay,
the tennis ball up in the air and Rocky snaps it. He could replace Billy Hamilton now. I'm pretty sure now the Reds need a center fielder. I think Rocky the Bulldog could be center field. I mean, Shotzi shit out there. So Rocky probably. Actually, now think about it.
I hope he has stilts or something because I mean he's not going. Look at their legs. Their legs are not.
He's a very active bulldog. That's all I can say.
Okay, fine. He could be very active still. Okay.
All right. Now, Tony, Lenny was the legend. Tony, you don't have a nickname or nothing in this industry? They didn't.
I didn't believe in nicknames because Scott Engel gave so many bad ones to people.
What did he call you?
I don't know what he called me. I wouldn't listen to him. I worked 5 years. I worked 5 years with a guy. Never heard a word he said.
All right.
Buddy? Which one?
Scott Engel.
Scott Engel. I want to know, was back in the day, just be honest. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure Corey doesn't listen to this show. He's a busy man now, the fantasy executive.
No,
but my argument with Corey, and I know you had a different argument. I'm talking like 5 or 6 years ago when he was truly the producer. Was he a bad producer as you guys put on, or was that a schmick?
Lazy.
Corey would tell you he was the worst. I think.
Yeah.
I think he would be on.
Right. I think you all said it that he was a terrible producer. And was it because he really was, or was it just stick? I mean,
he was lazy. Laziness. Right. That's the problem.
There's nothing wrong with that. I found him entertaining. I thought the show was entertaining when he was there.
Here's the problem in radio: is that when you do it like. In the fantasy world, it's different because we got there because of our fantasy knowledge. But if you're in radio, you get it from learning the ropes and you become a producer. And the next step is to be a host. Yeah. Well, he never wanted to be a producer. He just wanted to be a host. And he just skipped that part.
Yeah.
You're right. He was on the air all the time, and you guys, would always tell him to just, be quiet and get away and do his job. I don't know. I just found you guys
What do you like,
were
Sussman?
entertained.
Do you like listening to Sussman?
Me?
Yeah.
He's okay. I mean, I listen to all of them because I just have time. I mean, there's some, we've had that.
You don't have time
discussion in the
anymore.
past.
You have time to get your ass into our chat room. That's where you got time to be.
And that's where I'm at. You know
Thank
that.
you very much. All right.
So-
Well, as long as you're committed to this relationship, then we can continue.
Hugs and kisses.
Okay, bye. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for
See you
coming.
later.
But no, I mean, it's, I've listened to enough bad shows. I've listened to enough good shows. My problem is what we started all this with. I'm addicted. I can take a bad show and get a bit of fantasy information that I can use and take somewhere. That's the problem with fantasy sports talk is even the worst guy every once in a while will say one thing and you go, oh shit, that's good.
I'm going to teach you guys all a lesson. I'm going to teach you all a lesson. The legend will confirm this
in the morning. We'll have to ask.
I don't care how good or how bad your show is, because there are so many bad podcasts out there and they're terrible. You can build an audience if you do your show every week at the same time and just be reliable, because people will fall in love with the character. I met Lenny through listening to this guy called himself Mr. Fantasy, Mike Kuchera. It was the worst show you could ever imagine. He had good fantasy baseball advice, but he talked really slow. He would stop in the middle of the show and take a 3-minute drink of Pepsi. You could hear the ice going back and forth in the cup. And we would die laughing and listen to this knucklehead doing the show. And he would talk about how he screwed up and maybe that stat's wrong. But he did the show every week. He did the show the same time. And you looked at the iTunes ratings. He had the 3rd rated show in all of podcasts behind ESPN and CBS. And it was terrible. Just do your shows every week, the same time. Build yourself an audience. Be a character. Be yourself. And people will listen.
I agree. Like I said, I listened to some bad ones. And when I say bad, some of them are bad advice, some are bad sounds, some are, like you said, a boring person. But because this is fantasy and not entertainment in some cases for me, meaning I don't always listen to be entertained, it helps. But sometimes I listen because that guy does have a point of view that maybe other podcasters don't have for fantasy. And I sometimes think that information will help me maybe somewhere down the line. If everyone's listening to ESPN's podcast and they're playing on ESPN's league and they believe, Mr. Barry is correct, in a lot of home leagues, you'll see, I listen to ESPN's podcast just so I know what my teammates will do or the people I'm going to play against do, because that's all they'll listen to if they listen to any of them. Where the oddball guy.
See, here's the part that's tough for me and where everybody has to do their own thing, is that I had a lot of resentment against what I did, because I'd go off and I'd just say whatever I want to say and I'd try to make it fun and entertaining. And the reason I did that is I first got started from listening to Baseball Prospectus, Baseball HQ. They had amazing, amazing information. I couldn't listen to 30 minutes of that shit without falling asleep. It was so boring and it was so dull and they were monotone and the same voice the whole time. I said, you know what? I'm going to take that information. I know all about it, and I'm going to make it a TMZ style. So I'm going to give them baseball, but I'm going to give them some crazy shit that they're going to think about. I gave him Lenny knows this, and it used to piss Lenny off. We'd give 84 baseball facts, and people would ask me about a dog shitting in somebody's yard.
Right. I mean, again, especially with Sirius and FNTSY, if you're listening to a network that's on all day, and, the problem I kind of have with FNTSY is it's the same 5 or 6 people. And I'm not knocking them. I listen to all of them. But the problem is if they're on show at 8:00 in the morning, I know if they're doing a show at 7:00 at night, their opinion didn't change. So I don't need to listen again. Well, I'm not going to name names. I'm just saying, I know, when you do multiple shows,
Johnny,
you don't get, I want different aspects, I want different opinions so that I can then make my own opinion. If the same guy is going to be on 3 shows and give me the same, information that the Dallas Cowboys are great, that doesn't help me set my fantasy lineup or make any other moves. So, at least that's where I give Sirius a little, difference is, every couple hours it's new people, Now, unfortunately, you listen to one show and they'll say, yes, this is 100% definitely going to happen. Then the next guy will come on an hour later and go, this is 100% not going to happen, because they have different agendas.
All right, I'm going to tell you guys real quick how they find a show. The people don't know what they're talking about, and they're not doing their thing. If you listen to a fantasy sports show and you don't hear a statistic in an hour, don't ever listen to that show again, because basically they're just mailing it in and they're rehashing opinions and talk. You can't possibly do a fantasy sports show for an hour and not give a statistic. Like tonight, what we got here is this is like a barroom show, and we talk about general sports. But if you're tuning in for fantasy advice and you don't hear a statistic, that's not the show you should be listening to.
I would agree. I mean, that's why I tell people, I've told Chuck right up front, and Dan, Dan came later, this isn't a fantasy show. This is a general, we can talk about anything. Last week, I think it was dishwashers for some reason. We went off on a topic, we went off on, which we ended up not even talking about Little League today, which Tony, now I feel bad. That was the whole topic I was going to bring you on, is participation. And the reason I kind of didn't is Lenny wanted to be involved because he has a different opinion than you. And since Lenny didn't come on, I kind of skipped that and figured, well, if he comes on later, we'd talk about it. But
well, you also had a topic a couple weeks ago where you were talking about anal.
Well, again, topics change on this show a little bit, and that's the point. Yes, if you're tuning this in to set your fantasy lineups, this is the wrong show. I do a show on Wednesday nights with Chris Allen. He's an expert. I don't even know what that means in fantasy, but he does know stats and statistics, and I'm just there to keep him honest. And I have a lot of people that say, we love Chris. Chris knows everything, blah, blah, blah. And then every once in a while somebody go, but Easy, you at least made him answer that a different way, because some experts just throw shit out. And me as a fantasy guy, I'll go, time out. Now let's wipe shit a little bit. You know what? You can shit all you want. Now let's clean it up and give me, what you just said doesn't quite make sense to me as a fantasy guy. So, and that's what I do to Chris. And that's why Chris kind of likes it. That's what I bring to the table is I'm going to hold you to some of that shit you just say, where unfortunately on the serious shows, those are just the experts and they're just barfing up their own whatever they fed themselves. And
the problem with Sirius XM, and I think it's great, and I think it's by far the best fantasy sports station out there right now. Doesn't mean we hope someone can come up and take it. And I think there's an opportunity for someone to put something together better than that. Because here's what happens on those people, 95% of the people you hear on Sirius XM are not paid to be on that channel. What it is they promote the websites they belong to. So you hear Adam Ronas, he's part of Fantasy Alarm. He's there. John Hansen's promoting his football site. You hear Jeff Erickson's promoting RotoWire. So they don't get paid. So basically what they're doing is their job is to push you to their site.
Right.
So yeah, it's a fantasy channel and they're there to give fantasy advice. But their number one goal is to push you to their site.
Right. To pay $24 a month or whatever. Yeah. And I mean, I grasped that pretty early on. I know there's people that don't, I think there's people that think Sirius pays them, if you open your eyes, it's pretty easy to tell. And actually, and I think I said that one of our meetings where I talked with Lenny. I mean, Lenny was one of the few, and maybe that's why I started following him like 3 years ago. Back in the day, I was always like, you know what? That was one of the few things. Lenny never was selling anything. Lenny was just, a fantasy baseball guy. And that's what I got hooked on him 4 or 5 years ago is, hey, here's a guy that, he wasn't selling anything other than his advice on baseball.
When we started over there. We didn't give a shit about our website. We had the worst fucking website you've ever seen. Fantasy Pros 911. People couldn't even get in. People couldn't stay on. And we just went out there. Our goal was always to do the best show possible. And Lenny hasn't changed since then. He's absolutely getting it done. And he's trying to bring it to the next level with the site with Lenny Melnick Fantasy Baseball.
Right. And, and even then he doesn't push that when he's on Sirius, and him and Andrea are on. I love listening to them too, now. I mean, they're one of the few shows that aren't pushing anything other than good advice. you know, and that's why it is fun to be here and be in the chat room now and see what's going on. So, again, our ending now has gone 30 minutes, Tony. Dan, are you still with us? I know we lost Chuck. Now Chuck popped in. Dan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm rocking and rolling with you guys. I've been listening the whole time, having fun.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming out tonight. Chuck, I know you're having computer problems. Thanks for coming. Tony, again, I appreciate you coming on. You're welcome, any Tuesday night at 10 o'clock if you have nothing better to do. The link's always in the chat room. Everyone's invited. You're more than welcome.
I want Cha-Cha here next time and Lenny, and no one will be able to talk ever. It'll be great.
Now, I know Cha-Cha's been around a long time through Sirius. I've heard him a long time.
All you people out there, go to iTunes. It won't be up to the minute. And look up Fantasy Baseball and Bagels. It's a show I did with Cha-Cha for about 12 weeks.
Oh, wait. Hold on. What was the title again?
Fantasy Baseball and Bagels. And it's the craziest show ever that you've ever imagined. And it was on the Fantasy Sports Network. And I kept waiting for a call every week where they would be firing me for some of the stuff that we did. But it didn't happen.
Cha-Cha has come on, I think, 2 or 3 times now on the round table. He brings a different aspect to the show. I enjoy Cha-Cha. He's a blast. And that's what's fun about this show. Like I said, I have all kinds of people, Cha-Cha's been in the chat room tonight. Sometimes he pops in here and sometimes he doesn't. I mean, again, it's a come as you are kind of deal. So, I will now, probably go watch that, bagel show enjoy that for a little bit. Cha-Cha cracks me up. So,
yeah.
All right.
You'll love it. Just it'll change your appointment in life. And people out there, if you're gonna pray tonight, pray that Oprah Winfrey keeps the weight off, because when she was big and she kept getting bigger. Her arms didn't grow and she had a hard time wiping her ass. So pray for Oprah tonight.
All right. I'm not a prayer, but maybe tonight will be, I'll see if anyone's listening tonight, Tony. Dan, thanks again for coming out. Tony, I appreciate you for being on, and good luck with the dollar joke night or day or whatever it ends up being. You need to keep us up to date on that. Everybody out in the chat room, thanks again. We will see you again. Lenny Melnick, fantasysports.com. Lenny will be on tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock talking baseball. I have a show tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Me and Chris Allen will be doing a Fantasy Fan Sportscast, so join us there. Thanks for coming out tonight. We'll catch you all next week.
This has been Just a Fantasy Fan podcast. And to keep your fantasies going, follow us at justafantasyfan.com. Say good night. Good night.